Hey guys, welcome back to Teal House Farm, and today we are going to make apple jelly using the cores and peels we have saved in our freezer. So if you've been following along this fall, there's lots of canning going on, and anytime we canned apples or applesauce, I saved the cores and peels in these large ice cream containers and just threw them in the deep freezer. And today, there's not any canning that needs to be going on, so today is a great day to use these to make jelly. In previous years, we've used these to make apple cinnamon syrup, which is delicious, and I use it on pancakes, obviously, or I also use it as a marinade for like my beef briskets or my pork roasts in the crock pot, and it just adds such a nice sweet flavor and crisp to the outside, so it's something really handy to have on hand. We have plenty of syrup still. I made a whole bunch last time I made syrup, so I still got probably 10 or 12 pints left, which is plenty because we don't eat pancakes every day, don't use syrup every day. But if you're curious about how to make cinnamon apple syrup with your cores and peels, I will link that video below. Today we're going to make jelly, so if you'd rather make jelly, then watch this video with us. We'll show you how to do it. I keep jelly making super simple. Here is what you're going to need, and don't worry if you don't have a canner. You don't need a canner to do this. I have 2 ice cream buckets from the freezer stuffed with peels and cores. I tried to take the seeds out of the cores as we were kind of going along, but you really don't have to be super picky about it. We're going to end up straining everything anyway, so these are full to the top. You can, and some of these I peeled by hand, which is why there's more apple on there. So peels and cores, and I always add in just a couple whole apples too. So I'm probably going to add in maybe 4 of these little guys. Just going to quarter them and throw them in there too, just because cores and peels don't carry the same amount of weight or water weight as a whole apple, and so I just want to make sure I have enough apple in the juice that we're making to do the jelly. So 2 big buckets. Each one of these buckets is a gallon. So 2 gallons of cores and peels, and I'm going to add probably 4. I got just a couple random apples, 4 of these guys, and we'll just cut them in quarters and throw them in the pot. You also need pectin. So I just use pectin, Sure Gel pectin from the store, and I'm going to actually follow the recipe in the pectin packet for making the apple jelly. This is the way my grandmother made apple jelly, and so I like the way it tastes when she makes it, so I'm going to use it too. If you're looking for a lower sugar recipe, they do make low sugar Sure Gel. People make their own pectins. You can set jelly without sugar. It takes a whole lot longer, and your success rate is going to be a little bit lower when you're first learning how to do it. So we're going to show you the simplest way to do it here. We could talk about jelly with no added sugar or jams with no added sugar in the future, but that is not this video. So we're just going to need 1 packet today of the Sure Gel. This is the powder, but you could also use the Certo liquid. They work the same. So got 1 of these. We're going to need a pot. I have 1 2.5 gallon stainless steel pot we're going to use today. And we will need 5 cups of water. Now in order to can, we are going to water bath can these, but if you do not have a water bath canner, you can use just the biggest stock pot you have and put either a rack, like what's in your Instapot on the bottom, a little metal rack, or you can put a washcloth on the bottom of the pot before you fill it with water. You just don't want your jars sitting directly on the metal of the pot because it can get too hot and burst your jars. So you need some sort of barrier. People do, and I have jarred jelly before without canning it. So what you would do is you boil the jars, fill them immediately, put the hot lid and rings, you have to simmer your lids and rings too on there, and then immediately shove them underneath a towel on your counter and keep them in there for like 12 hours, and the jar should pop and seal. It's technically not as safe as water bath canning, and you also will have a higher seal failure rate. So I don't recommend that, but it is doable. You can also seal jars with wax if you don't want to have to use the disposable lids. There's lots of options. Today we're going to use jars. We're going to use 1/2 pint jars. We're going to use our water bath canner, and we're going to use both reusable Tatler lids and just some old, regular old ball metal one-time use lids for today. So let's go ahead and get everything started since we have gathered all our supplies. Okay, we got our stainless steel pot on the stove. We're gonna dump in our apple cores and peels. They obviously hold the shape of the container here because they're still pretty frozen. We're going to add 5 cups of water, and we're just gonna keep an eye on them as they cook down and make sure that those peels and cores fall into the pot and not out of the pot. We want to bring them to a boil, and then we're going to simmer them covered for 10 to 15 minutes. So we're just going to keep an eye on that pot. I have just a few apples in our fruit basket here that I need to use up. So I'm going to throw these in. It's not necessary to add a whole apple to this at all, but I want to use these up before they go bad. So we're just going to add them to the pot while we're doing this. All right, put that on the back burner to do its thing, and we're gonna fill up our water bath canner. We're gonna fill up halfway with water, and we're gonna use this to sterilize our jars before we do our canning. So I'm gonna add my clean half-pint jars to the canner, and then I'm gonna lower them in and simmer them for at least 10 minutes in this hot water. All right, next up we need to get our lids ready. I'm going to use 2 types of lids today. I'm going to use Tatler reusable lids, and I'm also going to use just regular disposable metal canning lids. These are the reusable lids, so it's a plastic lid and a rubber ring, and they can be used over and over and over and over again. And you sterilize them the same way you do the disposable lids. You wash them in hot soapy water, add them to a pan of water, and we're going to simmer them at least 10 minutes to sterilize them. All right, our apple cores and peels are starting to fall into the pan, so we're gonna put a cover on to help it get to a boil faster. And once it's done its thing for 10 to 15 minutes, we're gonna use a potato masher to mash them down into the water. And then we're gonna put the cover back on and let them simmer another 5 minutes. After that 5 minutes is up, we're going to add a strainer and then a flour sack towel inside of it and strain all the juice out into another pan. This does take some patience. You're gonna have to hang this bag. You can use cheesecloth as well. I'm just using a flour sack towel because that's what I have on hand. And so we're gonna hang it over the pot and just let it drip until it's cooled down enough to touch it. Whatever you need to do to make it hang there, you make that happen. I'm gonna use some coffee, and that'll weigh it down and just let it do its thing. Once it's cooled down, we go ahead and squeeze lightly, kind of twist the bag. We want to get all the juice out. We're going to need 7 cups of juice total in order to make the jelly. Measured it all out, and we pour it back into the pot that we had cooked the apples down in, and we're going to put that back on the stove and add 1 pack of regular old powdered pectin. We're going to stir that in. We get our sugar ready. This is going to need 9 cups of sugar. This is the part where I remind you, you can make jelly without added sugar, but today we're using store-bought pectin, so we're going to add sugar to make sure everything sets beautifully. If you want to do jelly without sugar, you're going to have a different process. I could make a video on that later, but today we're doing simple jelly. You bring it to a boil, add the sugar, bring it back to a boil, stir for 1 minute, and then you can go ahead and jar in your sterilized jars. We wipe off the rims of the jars, add our prepared lids and our rings, and then into the canner they go. We lower them into the water. You need at least 2 inches of water over your jar, so we add a little hot water to the pot, and then we're going to bring it to a boil, and we're going to process the jars for 5 minutes. Once they've been processed, we let it sit for 5 minutes, and then we can go ahead and remove our jars. They're going to sit on the counter for 24 hours. Then you can remove the rings and store. Don't be shocked if your jelly still looks a little jiggly right out of the canner. It's still really hot. It will set. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you all next time.